The super empath. So, in order to understand super empaths, we have to understand what empaths are. In order to understand what empaths are, we should probably start with what empathy is. So, let's start there. Empathy, I teach it as a projection. Empathy is actually a projection. So, many people feel that they have like this unexplainable power or ability to sense another person's feelings. Um, but the power is not unexplainable. It's not something that's unscientific. It's actually quite simple. We have the ability to sense our own emotions and our own feelings. And there's nothing confusing about that. All people have the ability to sense their own emotions and feelings. When we feel like we're sensing another person's emotions, what's really happening is we are projecting what we believe the person may be feeling. So we're making an intuitive or educated guess on what we think they might be feeling in the situation. And then we experience those feelings inside of our own body. So it's your feelings inside my body, and that's empathy. It's not actually their feelings, though, to be clear. When you think that you're feeling another person's feelings, you're not actually feeling their feelings. Their feelings are actually contained inside their body because each of us are separate vessels. And each of our vessels has its own hormones and chemicals and electrical impulses, which we call thoughts. And all of that is unique to us. It doesn't transmit across the field into another person. So I know that other people have said, yes, it does. It transmits through the air. I can just be eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and someone can feel sad and all of a sudden, boom, I just feel sad. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Does someone in here feel sad? And then I look over at that person and they're like, oh, how did you know? I totally feel sad. And I go, oh, because I'm an empath. That's how I knew. Well, you may have really had experiences like that, but none of that is scientifically trackable, and none of that is a part of um, a beneficial design. There is no beneficial design to you just trying to eat your sandwich and then you're just getting bombarded with other people's emotions just coming into you. What we are able to sense intuitively is a lot of nonverbal things in terms of a person's body language, their silence or their noise, their tone of voice. So we're able to sense a lot of things, especially when we're hyper vigilant, right? We're reading the body language, and we get this idea that we can read people, but we want to qualify that properly. We're not actually telepathically shooting across the field or getting a bombardment of energy, right, in a mystical sense. What it is that we're projecting what we believe a person is feeling, and then we're experiencing that feeling inside of ourselves. And that is a beautiful thing. Your empathy is what allows you to cry when you're watching those emotional videos on social media or a touching scene in a movie. How many of you cried during The Lion King when Mufasa died? Spoiler alert, in case someone hasn't seen it yet from 20 plus years ago. Like 30 years ago, right? But many of us cried during that scene even as children, right? And so empathy is your ability to project that someone might be feeling this way, and then you experience what they might be feeling inside of you enough that it really creates actual emotion. And we need to take that beyond the screen and outside of animated characters. We need to project that onto our relationships and with people. It is very important. When a person lacks the ability to have this projection of empathy, they are what we would call a narcissist or a psychopath because they're lacking empathy. That's not an okay thing. It's not a good thing, and it's nothing to admire. We want the ability to have genuine concern for others. So it's not just when it's obvious that they are feeling a certain way, it's concern even preemptively for how they may feel if we were to do one thing or another. So an empath is someone who has this deep sense of empathy coupled with morality so that it affects the way that they act. It even motivates their actions. They're motivated to help others because they want people to feel good. They're discouraged from doing anything that would be too insensitive to others because they don't want to make someone feel bad or tripped up, confused, or angry, right? So that is empathy. So an empath is someone who experiences that empathy. Where you have the difference between an empath and a super empath is their ability to control this gift of empathy, because an unhealed empath often feels out of balance with this empathy to the point where they have a concern for other people and how other people are going to be feeling, but they lack the proper balancing concern for themselves and the ability to care for themselves, to set those boundaries, to protect themselves. Does that make sense? And as a result of lacking the ability to protect themselves, they find themselves in repeated cycles of being abused or giving too much and feeling resentful. So unhealed empaths, traumatized empaths, toxic empaths, however you want to identify, CPTSD being the clinical term for the psychiatric disorder where you have a loss of self due to your hyper concern with everyone else. You have people pleasing due to that hyper concern with everyone else. You're living in fear. You're living in dread. You're living in anxiety. You're living in depression. You have trouble in your relationships, especially when it comes down to setting boundaries. That is a person who may say, I'm an empath, and they're right, but they're not healed. They're not balanced. The problem at the core is a broken relationship with the self. They have a way of going through the world with an I don't matter, I don't count mentality. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Everyone, as long as everyone else is good. I don't matter. Like they kind of deal with everything from this standpoint of, yeah, but I don't really count. And that's not healthy. And that can get us into trouble if we let that go too far, right? So they're in fawn response, which is prioritizing the other person to your own detriment. That's fawn, FAWN response, prioritizing the other person to your own detriment. It says, whatever you want, whatever you need. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is manifesting in people pleasing and high achieving. You're doing everything for everyone, but you're not doing very well at keeping yourself intact and staying moderate and balanced in how you're interacting. Or you're in flight response, which is abandoning your life to flee your source of fear or distracting yourself from your own emotions. So if you're the type to go home and I don't want to feel my feelings, so I'm just going to turn on this radio. You listen to music all the time, so you don't have to actually feel your feelings. Or you distract yourself, you're going for drives, you're watching television, you're shopping because you don't want to feel your feelings. You just run away from them. And then you lose track of what your feelings are, but the feelings are very much a roadmap to the self. So they're important. And when you just lose total track of them, you've gone too far. And that's where that unhealed, traumatized, toxic empath finds themselves. That's where you see the difference with what's called the super empath. So the super empath, and by the way, just like empath, super empath is this made up internet term that describes a very real person. And this person does exist. Just this is where somewhere whoever came up with this was the first one to coin the term, and then people kind of caught on like, yeah, that really I can relate to that. That's real. So this super empath, as it's called, is not necessarily more empathetic than an empath, but they act according to their empathy without losing themselves. They act according to their empathy without losing themselves. So, in this way, if you can use your empathy, now you can use this gift, but you're not losing yourself. So, it's like you're a superhero because you're able to go really far to sacrifice to help others, but you're not going as far as to snap and lose yourself and become the villain yourself. Does that make sense? Because what happens with an unhealed empath is that they'll go, 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 but because they don't set the proper limits on themselves, they snap. And there comes a point where they break. And if they don't go into freeze response, become catatonic, or end up in a hospitalization, then they break in another way, like becoming violent with other people, the same people who they had too much empathy for, or they become violent with themselves and they engage in self harm or even ending their own life. And they start talking about this and threatening about doing this, ending their own life. Their mind goes to this place. Why? Because they actually lose the core good and morality of the self and become the villain, threatening violence against their own self because they're unhealed, they're imbalanced. So they're defaulting to maladaptive coping techniques instead of doing what would be adaptive or balance, which is to set boundaries, to be assertive. And that's what you'll see with the super empath. So when the super empath is giving, 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 they have a moment where they'll stop and say, I'm not going to give anymore. I'm good. I think I've given to my max capacity. That is the ability to set boundaries, to create a limitation. I think I'm good here. I think I shouldn't give more. The super empath is assertive. So they're, even though they have that empathy for how another person feels, they're able to say, hey, John, I'm going to need you to stop doing that because that's irritating. They feel for how John might feel to be called out that way, but they don't allow that concern to stop them from doing what is loving, which is to be assertive, right? So they have a good sense of their own personal boundaries and they are assertive. Here's an example of how that looks different in an empath versus a super empath. So the unhealed empath will be in a relationship that they are not feeling, and then they'll say, I know I need to break up with him, but I'm afraid I'm going to hurt his feelings. So I'm not going to say anything right now. So you know you don't want to be in a relationship with him, but you don't break up with him because you're afraid you're going to hurt his feelings. Empathy, right? There's the empath, but healthy? No, not healthy to stay in a relationship falsely when you know that you don't want to be there anymore because you're afraid of hurting the other person's feelings. You see how it lacks the sense of self? Like, well, what about your feelings? You see that? And as a result, it will actually hurt the both of you because you'll be staying there, but you'll also be lying to him, which is unfair to him as well. So it's empathy, but it's not healthy. It's not balanced. The super empath has the maturity emotionally to say, I don't want to hurt his feelings. And I know that this may hurt his feelings, but it's the most loving thing to do to stop this now before he invests further and before I get trapped any further so that I don't have to be inauthentic. You see how that super empath is able to balance? Like, I care about his feelings, but I realize there's a point where I need to allow a person's feelings to be hurt, which may hurt me as well. So I may cry through this breakup as well because I'm feeling for how I've hurt this person. I'm feeling for how they feel. But that's not going to stop me from taking the action that's necessary to protect myself. And oh, by the way, that's a protection for him as well. That's how the super empath operates. And that's how you'll operate when you heal. The design of everything I'm teaching you here in our free meetings, and then once you enroll in healing school, is to help you to become the super empath. The best version of yourself is not one that doesn't have empathy or doesn't trust anyone or avoids all people or all of a certain gender. No, the best version of yourself is you with all of your wonderful empathy and all of your love and compassion, but tempered by morality, anchored in your high moral standards, and ultimately able to be assertive, to do the difficult thing, to set boundaries so that you're not having tumultuous relationships with others or yourself. So when you heal, you're going to have a good sense of personal boundaries. Or if you're having a better sense of personal boundaries since you've been working with me or coming to these classes, then what that means is that you're healing. Congratulations. That's a good thing. Now, there's a difference between empathy and codependency, which I'll illustrate to you. But we need to have the ability to understand others, empathy, without thinking that we have a superpower that's not real. So you have a lot of people who say, oh, I can read people. I can read people very well. Now, being a professional person who works with people, uh, I'm always put off by that comment. No, you cannot. We don't know. You can project, but what you're doing in intuitively reading people is coming up with an analysis of what a person is or how they're feeling, but it's not always accurate. So don't say I can read people very well because you can read people as well as anyone can read a person. It's not a special cosmic gift that you have. Let's keep it scientific here. You have the ability to read body language. You have the ability to recognize patterns in people. You have the ability to apply what you've learned in school or in these videos that you've been watching. You have the ability to sense people's tone of voice and their actions, right? The, but we are all viewing the world through our lens of bias, all of us. We're viewing the world through our lens of bias. When you're unhealed and you're viewing the world through fear and pain. And so when you're looking at a person, thinking that you can read people so well, you're really just projecting or seeing them through this lens of fear. So you're like, no, I don't think I can trust them. That's a red flag. That's a red flag. You don't know. Maybe. Could be right, but you don't always know. And how many times have you gone forward into something claiming that you're good at reading people? Turns out the person's bad and abusive. And then you go, yeah, but that's because I didn't listen to my intuition. I should have listened to my intuition. And then I would have, well, yeah, but reality is your intuition is flawed because it's always telling you to be afraid of everyone because you're unhealed and you're just in fear. And so when you had the fear and then you didn't follow the fear and then it turned out not well for you, then you go back and say, I didn't listen to my intuition and that's the problem. Not necessarily. What the problem is that you may have become codependent, prioritizing this other person too much, idealizing the other person too much, and you fell too far into the situation before having all of the information. I want you to make decisions based on information, not on feelings. Intuition is feelings. It's making a decision without all the information. That's inferior. So yeah, it would have been nice if you would have slowed down in the beginning, but I don't want you to do that out of fear. I want you to do it out of an abundance of caution because intellectually it's the best strategy for you to withhold the emotion and the aggrandizing of the other person, stay reserved and analyze and observe and get to know, gather more data so that we can be analytical or critical in our thinking and not just feelings, feelings, feelings. Oh, I got to follow these feelings. That's disorganized. We want to pause, analyze. That's how we can keep ourselves safe in relationships. Slow down, pause, analyze, get to know a person. It takes a good solid year, depending on several factors, to get to see a person in all 4 seasons. Take your time. There's no reason to develop feelings for someone faster than that. Take your time. You need time to get to know what a person's flaws are. It's not about, oh, I should have listened to my intuition. Often, empaths and super empaths are drawn to professions where they can help other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, what happens with the unhealed empath is they lose themselves in these professions, or they become overwhelmed in these professions, and they get burned out. So, what's the difference between that codependency, where we give too much in these relationships, and just proper empathy? What you find in codependency is you have guilt and fear as your motivators. That is not super empathy. So if you find that guilt and fear is a big motivator in your relationships, you're not operating in your highest self. So that would sound like, I don't want to move out because my mom's getting really old, guilt, and things are very expensive. I don't know if I can make it on my own, fear. So now you don't want to move out of your toxic mother's house because your mother's getting old, guilt, and you don't want to abandon her, so you feel guilty. And fear, this is not super empathy. This is empathy at its lowest level. You're not properly prioritizing that self-care, right? So what would a super empath say in the situation? What do you think? A super empath looks at the situation and says, well, yes, of course, she is getting older. But what is actually my responsibility here? I was not born on this earth to be her slave. And I can do more for her ultimately if I have more, if I've built something for myself. And so, although I feel fear that it could be difficult out there for me, I'm not going to let that fear stop me from living life experiences and failing my way to success. That's healed empath thinking. I'm not born to be someone else's slave or caretaker for the rest of my life. That's not what I'm here to do. I can do more for the person anyway when I have something to share of my own that I've built. And although I feel the fear, I'm not going to let that fear stop me from moving forward, living my life, fulfilling my purpose, and failing my way to success. I'm not letting the fear of failure stop me. I'm embracing failure as a part of the process. I have to go out there and scrape my knee so I can learn to run. Is that making sense? That's where we're going to get you as that super empath. But make sure that you're locked in, doing sessions with me, enrolled in the healing course, where you can get a free session with me if you're enrolled. You do have gifts as an empath. Your deep connection to others, your powerful sense of compassion and care for what other people are feeling. It's important. It's important. It allows you the ability to inspire, and you have a gift that once you get it under control, you can use it to heal others. I used to read the X-Men comics, and one of the premises was that these mutants who had these gifts, these abilities, would go to Professor X, his school. They wouldn't know how to control the gift. So you had the one guy, Cyclops, he's got cosmic blast, kinetic blast shooting out of his eyeballs all the time. And so he has to wear a blindfold around, which makes him blind. So Professor X lovingly makes him a special pair of glasses that he can wear that holds back the kinetic blast and allows him to be able to see. Or you have someone who comes in and they've got the ability to read other people's thoughts, and they're going, oh no, I can read other people's thoughts all the time. I can't turn it off. And then Professor X will give them a special helmet they can wear. Now I can walk through life and not hear everyone's thoughts all the time. Isn't that beautiful? So that's what I'm doing here is I'm helping you with your gifts to hone them so that it's not just a other people, I don't know where I start and the other person ends. And we can tune it in and we can actually start doing some good with our gift beyond just being a slave to, okay, what do you need? And what do you need? Everyone all the time. We can come into our own strength and our own power. You have the ability to do that. In fact, I'll give you some keys to getting started right now. What you're lacking, what's separating you if you're an unhealed empath from being a super empath, is an ego that is as strong as your empathy. An ego that is as strong as your empathy. Now, when I refer to an ego, what I'm referring to is your sense of self. Your sense of self. So, in other words, how do you feel about you? So, you have all these concerns about everyone else. Do you have the same level of concern for you? Same level of concern for how you feel, for what you need? That's especially important because in order to be able to care for others, we have to care for ourselves. Imagine if I was a cook that fed everyone for weeks but never ate himself. Eventually, I would perish from a lack of nutrition and therefore be able to cook for no one. Not very helpful. That's what we're doing as unhealed empaths, going around bending over backwards too much for other people. You're not going to be around to be able to help these other people much longer. So we need to find that balance. The balance comes in getting the ego, the sense of self, just as big, just as strong as our love for others. And we should grow in both of these. More love for the self, more love for the others. We need both of them to be together, and you got to love others as much as you love yourself, and vice versa. This is universal law. This is universal law. How does this work? How can you grow your ego to be more strong and stop losing your sense of self? Well, one of the big things you can do is pause and meditate before agreeing and responding to people in your life. Use this at work, use it in relationships. Just slow it down. Just like this. Hey, can you help me with this? I just said to the so and so. Just, I would like to help you, but I don't want to agree too hastily. Let me get back to you on that. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. Just that movement right there is going to bring you light years toward your healing. Just that pause and stop will allow you the time and the space to think and consider who? You. Another tip for growing the ego in a healthy way. This is very important. Change your self-talk. Change your self-talk. I was just talking to a client today. She said she started using the word lazy when she was describing herself. She was like, I don't know if I'm lazy. I don't know if I'm lazy. It kind of kept came coming up, and I stopped him. Hey, what is that? Why do you keep using that word lazy when you're talking about yourself? She was unaware that she was doing that. That's the form of self-abuse. I pointed out to her. Lazy, by definition in the dictionary, is unwilling to work. Well, we say that to ourselves, like, oh, I'm so lazy, but that's the voice of the narcissistic mother or father from our childhood who would talk to us like that. What are you, lazy? What are you doing? It's 9 a.m. and you're still in the bed. And they make us feel like we have to be like, just like moving all the time and accomplishing and doing stuff. Right. And then you're telling everyone, yeah, I got some stuff done today. I did stuff today. But you're a grown up now. You don't have to take a moment and realize, get rid of that voice of the narcissistic mother. You don't need to call yourself lazy for not doing some extra above and beyond thing. You can just relax. Relax. You're a hard worker. It's okay. You want to aim your blows and your work toward your purpose and not put too much energy and work and effort into things that are not your purpose. That's not laziness. That's strategy. It's intelligence. If you say, I had another client, my idiot brain, and she kept going back, calling herself or referring to her brain as an idiot brain. Again, I have to step in. Hey, what is this? What is this? Why are we talking like this? You don't have an idiot brain. You have a brilliant mind. Your mind is brilliant. We have to watch that. That language is important, right? Because I have a buddy, every time he makes a mistake when we're playing games, he goes, I am a piece of feces. Eesh. I understand why it feels like when you exclaim these types of things, it doesn't matter because it goes back to that unhealed empath mantra. I don't exist. I don't matter. I don't count. But none of that is true. None of that is accurate. None of that is beneficial. It's a sinful way of thinking. It is not aligned with how you are designed to operate in this universe. And if you believe that you are created in the image of your creator, then stop insulting what your creator has created and instead start appreciating it. If you've done the meditation work, I have a meditation on my TikTok page where we go back to your childhood home and we rescue you as a child. And you can find that there. But if you do that meditation, you realize you have your child with you all the time. She can hear what you're saying. He hears you. So you have to be careful with your thoughts. The language matters. We don't call children a piece of feces. We don't call children an idiot brain. We don't say to children, you're lazy. It's not how you raise a child. You have to protect it. You have to build it up. That child is the ego. It's the self. Protect the child. That's how you build a strong ego. How is it supposed to sound in the brain? You're supposed to be talking to yourself like, you can do anything. That's how you're supposed to sound in your brain. You can do anything. You're capable of something amazing, incredible. You have greatness in your potential. You have your own type of genius. You are really smart. You are beautiful in your own way. You are lovable. You are attractive. Children and animals are drawn to you. I trust you. That should be what's running in your head all the time. This is the correct self-talk. Okay? Make up your own versions. You don't have to use my words. Make up your own versions. Talk to the self like that, building the self up all the time. That is the correct self-talk. That's how healthy people are speaking to themselves, not the constant tearing down. Do you go and tell other people about this self-talk? No. You don't say to other people, I can do anything. I'm capable of anything. No. You don't do all that. Why? Because they have fragile egos and you don't want to crush out their ego. And that's the course of humility on our part. So we're humble because we keep this conversation private, just as you would if you had a child. You would build them up like that. You say, you can do anything. You're capable of something incredible. You have greatness in your potential. You have your own type of genius. You are beautiful. You are lovable. You are attractive. I trust you. You would say that to the child, but you don't go to the school assemblies and then you're just like talking your child up too much, right? There's a limit. You don't go, my child can do anything. He's capable of everything. Okay, calm down, mom. Like, we get it. We get it. You love your kid, right? So that same way, that's how we balance that. If you're wondering, like, well, I don't want to come off as arrogant and conceited. You don't become arrogant and conceited by building yourself up in your mind. You become arrogant and conceited by putting others down. So don't worry. You can go ahead and pour into that cup. Build it up, build it up, build it up. You need a big, strong, fluffy ego. It's got to be as big as your empathy. So if you notice you got a lot of empathy, then let's ratchet up this ego so you can have both and you can be the super empath. If you want to learn more, you can enroll in the healing course. Get in contact with me. My number's on the website. Send me a text message. I love to hear from you. I love you all.